Literary Lounge, where we have honest conversations with authors about life, literature, and the spaces in between. The author I have with me here today is joining us from Cambridgeshire, England. Paige Toon grew up between England, Australia, and America and has been writing books since 2007. She has written 16 novels, a three-part spin-off series for young adults, and a short story collection. Her novels have sold over 2 million copies worldwide. And I've talked about her books and have even recommended them to everybody I meet. And now that we're finally here, I'm more than thrilled to talk to her about her romance novels, how she manages to craft heartbreaking love stories that stay with you long after you've finished reading them, and everything else that goes beyond the scenes. So, first of all, thank you so much, Paige, for joining us today for this conversation. How are you doing? And what have you been reading these days?
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm doing really well. I started writing my new book today, so I'm in high spirits. I write a book a year, so every time September time rolls around, that's when I'm starting to get into the swing of writing. So I'm really good. And in terms of what I'm reading, I am still reading Jill Santopolo's sequel to The Light We Lost, which is called The Love We Found. And it's an advanced copy. It doesn't come out till next year. So I'm really enjoying that. So that's a good one to read.
Oh, that's amazing. I have read his first book, The Light We Lost, but I'm really looking forward to the sequel now. I did not know there's a sequel coming out, actually.
There is, yeah, next year.
Oh, amazing, amazing. I would love to know your thoughts on it as well.
Oh, well, I'm really enjoying it at the moment. I think with The Light We Lost really broke my heart. This one's healing it again. You know, there's another love story, but you know, a very rich, you know, sort of story, everything that's going on in the background. But yeah, it's nice sort of able to read a romance of someone falling in love that, you know, you hope is going to have a happy ending.
Yeah. Oh my God. Wow. I would love to pick it up next year. And wow, which reminds me that your new book, What If I Never Get Over You, is in the early review phase right now. And of course, it's going to come out in April 2025. What have you been hearing from your reviewers? And can you tell our audience a little bit about it?
Well, the book is called What If I Never Get Over You? These are like the early reading copies. So it just has the title on it, but it doesn't have, you know, any artwork yet. But if you go to my Instagram at Paige Toon, you can see the artwork that will be hitting the shelves next year. And that's a story about Ellie and Ash, and they meet 6 years ago when they're interrailing around Europe. And Ellie is in a quite difficult sort of stage of her life. She's, you know, thinking about quitting interrailing. She's, you know, had something difficult sort of happen to her. And then she meets Ash on the day that she just decided to give up interrailing. And he just sits down opposite her and he's gorgeous. And they spend these 3 days together in Lisbon and they have like a shared experience and they just bond. Like the chemistry between them is so strong. And they decide to meet up again in Madrid a week later. And she's late and he never shows up. And so she's absolutely heartbroken. And then you fast forward 6 years later, and she's now sort of changed the course of her life, doing a job that she loves. And she gets this job as a gardener, working on this grand estate in Wales on the English border, you know, working for this Viscount and Viscountess, you know, in this gorgeous sort of place. And yeah, he crashes back into her life, but not in the way she was, you know, could have ever predicted. So it was a really fun novel. It's also very emotional. You know, there are various, you know, I write feel it all fiction, you know, sort of stuff that really makes you feel. And so, you know, she still goes through quite a few ups and downs, you know, and so does Ash. But yeah, it's a really also just a really fun, really romantic read. So I'm excited to hear what readers think.
I am really excited to pick it up. I read Seven Summers and I was in tears, and I remember I finished it late at night, around 2 or 3 a.m. in the night, and I recorded a review at that point in time itself because I was so emotional. I was crying and I had so many things to say about the book at that point in time. I was like, I cannot wait till morning. I have to record it right now and then
Oh.
post it. So I remember that feeling. So I am sure that this other book of yours is going to be as amazing as that. And I'm
Oh.
really looking forward to picking it up.
I've loved your story that you posted when you just finished reading Seven Summers, because when I finished writing Seven Summers, like, and you know, if anyone watching wants to sort of see the cover, you know, this is like the UK cover. And if you're in the US, you can pick up this one. And certainly I think this is the one that's sold in India. it just, you know, I was in floods of tears, like absolutely sobbing my heart out. And I did an Instagram live. So I ended up sort of going live on Instagram to tell my readers at 1 o'clock in the morning that I'd finished writing this book, and it was heartbreaking. And yeah. So if anyone wants to see my reaction to finishing that book, you can look up March 2023.
I'm gonna do that now. I haven't watched that yet. I need to do that now.
Yeah, if you thought you were a mess, wait till you see me. Like, this is ugly
Yeah.
crying, you know,
Which
no
actually brings,
makeup, red-faced and like absolutely miserable.
oh my God, yeah. Of course, at 1 a.m. in the night, you wouldn't be, in the most proper position of your life. And oh my God, wow. I mean, that's the rawest feeling of an author and of a reader, where they've just finished writing a book and they have so many emotions about it. And when a reader just finishes reading the book and they have so many emotions about it and they really want to share it, I think that's very raw. And I think I like that. I like that a lot more than all of those scripted reviews that, I mean, we bookstagrammers write.
Yeah, I mean, I write the sort of books that I want to read. You know, I want to feel all of these emotions and feel deeply connected to the characters. And as you know, when I'm writing them, I feel like I'm inside the character's head and I'm experiencing everything that she's experiencing. So, you know, I have been on so many journeys and lived so many different lifetimes in my short life. Well, it's not that
I
short,
can only
actually.
imagine.
It's a busy time as a writer.
Absolutely. Which actually brings me to my next question, that when you write such heartbreaking romances, so the first book that I read of yours was this called Only Love Can Hurt Like This. And when Seven Summers came out, I knew that I had to pick it up. But people at Penguin were very kind to send it my way. And I have highlighted so many pages as well. I have so many highlights. I keep going back to them every now and then. So, writing such heartbreaking romance novels, does it have any impact on your life? And if yes, how do you cope and how do you deal with it?
I mean, when I finish writing, like I need a little bit of time to, I'm still very stuck in, when I finish writing an entire book, I still have to, I'm still kind of grieving the characters and the end of the book for maybe about a week or so. Like I'm still thinking about it quite a lot. I want to go back and reread certain scenes, and I want, you know, I find it really, really hard to let certainly my most emotional books go. Like it takes a long time before I can kind of move on, you know, to writing the next book. On an average day when I'm writing, I try to, when I leave my writing studio, you know, I write from a camper van at the end of the garden. And when I kind of come back inside, it's always in time for the kids coming home from school. And I like to be mum, and I want to make sure I'm sort of present, you know, as mum. But when I'm in my writing deadline and those like few weeks of really intensive writing, I have to really pull myself out of that headspace to just act normally. Because I think I write almost in a method acting kind of way, you know, like method actors live and breathe the characters the whole time that they're filming. And, you know, certainly when I'm writing, like I'm so immersed in the characters and their emotions, you know, especially towards the end, like in those last few weeks, it's really intensive. But yeah, I do try to wrench myself away from them when I come back into the house and a mum.
Makes sense, actually. And of course, when you have life beyond the book, then of course you have to give them ample time and ample space and ample headspace as well. And which is why you'll have to pull yourself out of the book, out of whatever you're writing, and then be there for them at that point in time. Does it get sometimes difficult to do that?
Is it what, sorry?
Does it get sometimes difficult to do that? Um,
Yeah, to pull myself out. Like, yeah, like a little bit, especially when I finished a book. But there's just so many emotions attached to finishing a book. Like even most of my books, almost all of my books have got happy endings, but there's usually a bittersweet nature. Like there's something there that still kind of makes your heart feel a little bit broken, a little bit sort of grieving. You know, there's something, they're never completely 100% happy. And even those, you know, even those ones that are sort of happier than others, I still get this big rush of emotion when I finish writing, you know, that kind of, I've cried with every single book that I've written, you know, like I've always burst into tears at the end, or in the case of Seven Summers, like literally sobbed my entire way through so many pages of that novel, you know, and the ending, like writing the ending of Seven Summers, you know, I didn't know what the last few words would be until a couple of sentences before I was writing it. And I was wailing. I just felt so sort of emotional about these words that I was typing out, and so, but when I'm in that state, on the last weekend of my book deadline, my husband tends to take the kids away, like up north, to go and see his family, and so I can just completely lose myself 20, like almost all of the day, like I stay up really, really late, finished it at 1 a.m. I was up working at 7, and I just worked all day long. So it's easier in that scenario that I don't have to pull myself out of the grief, and away from the characters, because I can still sort of live inside their heads, because I've got nobody to interrupt me, so when I'm writing and I'm, like I say, only really at the very, very end, the absolute deadline, I'm completely able to just focus and stay sort of tuned in with the characters' emotions.
That is so sweet. That's so sweet and heartwarming. So, is the next book the one that you're writing currently? You just started writing it. Apparently coming out in 2026. Is that going to be a heartbreaking romance as well? Do you have a storyline in mind, or are you just figuring things out?
Yeah, no, I pretty much know the whole storyline now. Like when I start writing, I tend to know pretty much the whole story and how it's going to pan out. I think Seven Summers, that was clearer for me probably than with any other book. Like it was really, really clear. Like I knew exactly how it was going to pan out, and I knew about, that whole epilogue and everything like that. With this one, it's not quite as clear as Seven Summers, but it always finds its way as you're coming along, and when you're getting to know the characters, and an opening will sort of come up, like with Only Love Can Hurt Like This, for example. I didn't know I was going to write from Anda's point of view until I reached that point in the book. And I was thinking, I need to be inside his head, and I need to be experiencing this to really get the emotion of this big twist that happens in that book, so yeah, things will change and sort of move along, as I'm going. But in the case of Seven Summers, like it was almost identical to what I kind of mapped out at the very beginning.
Makes sense. Makes sense. So, okay, you're a little short on time, but I would like to ask you so many questions about Seven Summers. Um, when writing about Liv and Finn, I noticed that both of them were right in their own ways, but they, of course, were instances where they couldn't meet, and then whenever they used to part ways, I had a very heart-crushing moment, and I did not really like that part. And I wanted them to meet and wanted them to end up together. So, how easy or difficult is it for you to write morally gray characters? Both the protagonists are right in their own places, but somehow, someway, they're not able to meet. Does that have any impact, or how do you write such morally gray characters? What are your thoughts on it?
So I don't really think they're morally grey in the sense that they're both, like you say, good people, and like their morals are all present and correct, because this is a love story, but it's like there's no cheating, that nobody does anything wrong, it's a love triangle. What happens in Seven Summers is you have 6 summers of Liv falling in love with Finn, and every summer he returns year after year, and they both agree that if they're single, then they'll pick up where they left off. And then in those chapters are interspersed with this summer when Liv is meeting and falling in love with someone else. And that something has happened and gone wrong with Finn, so she's not really expecting him to be back that summer, and so she's sort of allowing her heart to reach someone else. So like I think their morals and their ethics, are all really sort of very straight and narrow. I think they're all really, really good people, but all of my characters have got flaws, some more than others. And that's really important to me. And sometimes it'll be another character, like a friend or someone like that, who voices the concerns about their morally gray sort of areas, where they might be going wrong, or, kind of questioning their antics and stuff. But I just really like writing believable characters, and nobody's perfect and everybody's got, flaws. And it makes for a much more interesting novel, and I think some of my characters are more likable than others. There are certain characters that I've written, one in particular who I can think about who is not that likable. But I know that everyone, on the whole, everybody sort of like who's reviewed Seven Summers have said they really like Liv, so that's nice. It's nice to write a character that people really kind of connect with and really like. But it is fun to also write people who are a little bit naughty.
I think that makes a lot of sense. If you have relatable characters, the readers can also relate with whatever they're doing in the book as well, right? Because if it's something very idealistic, I think I will not be able to connect with the protagonist or with the character who is in the limelight, and then I'll just feel disassociated with the book. So I think that makes it easier to finish 400 pages of a book, because otherwise it gets really difficult to pick a book like that, right?
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah.
So, what's the best part you liked about writing Seven Summers? Any particular scene that you love the most?
I always love writing the love scenes. Like I always love writing the moment, like the chemistry, the moment that they kiss, the moment they take things further. Like I always really love that. I think a couple of my favorite scenes. One of them was this argument that Liv and Finn have, and Michael, her brother, who has Down syndrome, he overhears them arguing, and he gets involved, and he says something to Liv that just changes her whole perspective on things. And I loved writing Michael's character and the bond between brother and sister. So that's kind of a special scene to me. And another one that I just absolutely loved writing was the moment that in the present day, this summer, when Finn comes back and she's standing with Tom, the man who she's fallen in love with, and she sees Finn again for the first time in a year, and the way her whole the years sort of roll back on themselves, and she remembers these moments, and and there's this one line, I don't realize that I'm actually, I can't even remember what it is, but it's something like, I don't realize that I've moved away until I find myself standing alone. I don't realize that I've stepped away from Tom until I find myself standing alone. And it's like just this moment when she's sort of in doubt about what she's chosen, and I loved writing that scene.
Oh my God, I'm totally imagining it because I've read it, and hearing it from you, I'm absolutely in awe of it again. Maybe I need to go back to the book again. It's time to go back to it.
I've been feeling cravings to read it again myself. It's really strange, because like they're still so much a part of me, those characters, like I think Seven Summers is probably my favorite book that I've ever written. But it's so emotional, and the character Liv, she goes through so much. And I went through so much in writing it and pouring all of that emotion into there's only so many years. There have to be a few years that go by before I can write a book that's that emotional. The last one prior to Seven Summers was 5 years from now, and that was a really heart-wrenching book to write. So What If I Never Get Over You is not as emotional. It's still emotional, but it's a bit lighter, and it's not quite as grueling. You didn't catch me at like 1 a.m. sobbing into Instagram live. I still cried, every time I sort of get to the end, it will make me well up with emotion, but it's not kind of like full on ugly crying.
Really hoping to not get my heart broken again, but I really love romance with grief for some reason, which is why I think I picked up Seven Summers as well, and why I'm really anticipating your next book too, because I know the kind of writing you have, and it's absolutely stunning. I mean, I love your writing style and how you frame emotions, how people fall in love, and all of that. It's so beautifully scripted, crafted. I mean, I've rarely come across such beautiful writing. So, I mean, kudos to you for your
Oh,
writing. It's very beautiful.
so kind. Thank you. That's so lovely. That's
It
so kind. It
actually
means the world to me, I think, when my readers connect with the stories on the same level that I do, because, writing is such a solitary business. I'm sitting there, I'm the only one who's experiencing this. And until my editors read it, nobody else has this story. Like, it only belongs to me. I can obviously talk about it to friends and my husband, and I'll talk about the various points, but the characters belong 100% to me. And then it goes out into the world, and it takes a while before when I've finished writing it, because I finished writing it in March 2023, and it came out in, what was it, April 2024. So over a year later. And at that moment, when readers start feeling the way that I felt as I was writing it and posting reviews like the one that you did in the middle of the night, that means the world to me, because I'm no longer alone. Like I'm connecting with all of my readers. Like, we all love these same characters that feel so real to me, and I know that they feel real to my readers too. And I sort of imagine them all living in this parallel universe.
Yes, I mean, I do too. I mean, whenever I'm reading a book, it's like I'm watching a movie, but better, because I can then have my own scenes and everything. I don't have to rely on somebody else for that. So,
Yeah.
absolutely love that. Which brings me to my next question, that when you're writing these characters, have they been ever inspired from real life people, real life incidents, or real life storylines, or is it all imagination?
It's mostly imagination. Sometimes it will come, like an idea will come from, even watching a movie or, reading a book, and it's almost always to do with the emotion that I want to feel. And so if I've read a book and it's made me feel a certain emotion and I want to feel that emotion again, then I will, like find a story that I can write that makes me feel in a similar sort of way. Or sometimes I'll be watching a movie and I'll think, what about that character? Like who might be a small bit part character, and sort of imagine what would have happened to that person if they'd gone on and done this, and then suddenly that sparks off another idea. And like with Seven Summers, I had the idea for Seven Summers about this girl who lived in a tourist beachside town who has this boy who comes back year after year, and this, but I wasn't, and I had another idea about this mystery sand artist, who's Tom. And I wasn't completely gripped on that story until I listened to 'Tis the Damn Season by Taylor Swift and imagined that Finn is a singer-songwriter like Taylor Swift who comes back, year after year, and how hard it would be for the person who is from the hometown to let go of someone who is so special, and to actually move on with their lives, and I just sort of that sort of spiraled off into that whole idea, and that's why Finn ended up being a singer-songwriter, because I like the idea of him writing songs that might relate to Liv, and also, he goes on to write songs with somebody else, who he has an emotional connection with, which is very upsetting.
I get it. Oh my God, wow. That is so lovely. I mean, I'm thinking about it and I'm really going back to the time I read Seven Summers first. It was so beautiful. The experience was entirely thrilling because I remember finishing it in 2 days and I was in the book so much I wasn't really focusing on anything around me because I had work. I knew I had to work, but then I was so into it, I really had to push my laptop aside and I was like, let's just finish the book first and then I'll get back to you.
I love that.
So, are there any characters that you relate with the most, or any character which is your favorite?
um I mean, I relate to all of them in some small way, but I was thinking about, this like just recently and thinking about all of my different characters, and like they're all so different and they're all so different to me, apart from probably Lucy from Lucy in the Sky, because that book was inspired by me feeling very torn between England and Australia. My parents had moved back to Australia. I grew up in Australia, but then when I was a teenager, they moved the whole family to England. And I felt so torn and was so heartbroken to leave all my friends. And then when I was in my 20s and I was settled in England, they moved back to Australia. And I couldn't really leave England. Like I had a really great job and a boyfriend, who didn't want to live in Australia. And I felt very torn, And so I poured a lot of my emotion about feeling torn between the two countries into that novel. So yeah, it's probably Lucy in the Sky, which was, I wrote like, 17 years ago, over 18 years ago. So, and since then, all of my characters, I think have just they've gone through so many different things, and
I would
it's
love to
been
read that book.
yeah, I'd be interested to know what you think. I mean, I think that my present books, the ones that I write now, they're a bit more multi-layered, and the sort of stuff that I research and write about is, like a little bit more in depth, and they're more emotional and they're a little bit darker sometimes. My earlier stuff isn't quite as heavy, but it's still emotional. They're still, they're not supposed to be light. They're a little bit lighter and a little bit funnier, but they are, they still have a sort of a depth of emotion, I think, that sort of really makes you feel it, feel everything when you're reading.
Got it. Got it. Makes sense. I would love to pick that book. And now that we're talking about your journey through the years and how your characters have developed, I'm sure as a romance writer also, you would have evolved in all of these years, right? I mean, 16, 17 years is a lot of time to, evolve. And of course, because you write romance and very emotional, heartbreaking stories, you would have a good understanding of what good literature, good romance novels look like and how they hit the best-selling charts. So, what are your thoughts on it? What is that secret sauce that makes a romance novel or a novel hit the best-selling chart?
I mean, obviously there's, sometimes a book just sort of, runs away, the public will get involved, and, it just sort of gathers steam and it just takes off. I mean, for me, it's the novels that really make me feel. You know, it is the ones that, you know, really kind of clutch at my heartstrings and make me feel. Some authors are very, very funny and really clever with it, you know, and I think that's, you know, that's a real talent to have that. But certainly, like, all of the books that my favorite books are ones that make me feel and that have chemistry. Like, I love love stories, you know, like that is my favorite genre by far. But I love reading, you know, fantasy love stories, like romantasy and stuff, you know, like I love reading sort of dystopian love stories, and, you know, I just love reading love stories. I don't really care where it's set, or, you know, I just want to feel the chemistry as much as possible. So yeah, that's, you know, certainly the best-selling like romances, I think, are the ones that really connect you to the characters and what they're going through.
I think that makes a lot of sense, because the ones I have loved the most also are the ones where I have been so knee deep in the book, I am unable to look at anything else. I'm able to relate with the characters, I'm able to feel their emotions, I'm able to feel everything they are going through, their struggles, their love life, their relationships. I think that is what makes a novel whole, and it makes it all the more better.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
And with that, I think we have come to an end of this discussion. But before I let you go, I would like to ask you for romance recommendations, because you've been reading so much, you've been writing romance, and I would love to know which romance novels are your favorite, which would you recommend to us, and what are your auto-buy authors?
Well, I mean, probably my, you know, some of my favorite romances are by my auto-buy authors. So, so I can start with that. I love Emily Henry. I think You and Me on Vacation is probably my favorite, although I loved Beach Read. I like Beth O'Leary, The Flat Share, is a, you know, my favorite of hers. Carly Fortune, I adore. You know, she's sort of more quite new to me. She's only written, you know, 3 books so far, but Meet Me at the Lake is probably my favorite of hers. Abby Jimenez is a sort of more of a new to me author, but I'm just devouring her books at the moment. I read Just for the Summer over the summer and just thought that was absolutely fantastic. Like, I loved it. Who else? Christina Lauren. I will always read Christina Lauren. I just that they write chemistry so well, and they do really spicy books too. But they still tell the story, and they still write about the connection, the emotional connection. So they're fantastic. I think Love and Other Words might be my favorite of theirs, and that's not actually as spicy as some of the others, but, you know, I absolutely loved it. And Colleen Hoover, like, I love so much of what Colleen Hoover writes. That she's one of my favorite authors. You know, I've read everything that she's written. In fact, I quoted on Slammed like, when I was already, I think I was writing my 5th book when Slammed came out, and I remember my publisher asking me to give a quote for it. So from that moment on, I was hooked on her. That was back in 2012. So yeah, big fan.
That is so cool. I mean, I've read, I think, most of the authors. Yet to read Abby Jimenez. I think I have a book just for the summer, but I haven't read it yet. Haven't gotten a chance. But I think I've read most of the other authors, except for, of course, Carly Fortune. I haven't read her book yet, but I
Yeah,
would
you
love
love.
to.
Yeah, she's great. She's really good. Oh, and Annabelle Monaghan's another one who I'm absolutely loving at the moment. Annabelle Monaghan. And I just remember finishing, might have even been 7 Summers. I finished 7 Summers, and I had about a week before I was due to start editing. And I just had this one day that I was going to do nothing other than lie on the sofa and read. And I read her entire book, Nora Goes Off Script. And I just loved it. I've never read a book from start to finish in a day before. But I could not put that down. So I highly recommend Annabelle Monaghan.
Oh, I think I've had that on my TBR for a very long time. And then
It's
okay,
so fun.
so
It's so fun.
there are a few so there's this one thing in India. Books that launch in the US take a lot of time to come to Indian bookstores. I mean, sometimes it's a month, sometimes it's 2 months, or sometimes it's more than that. So I think I had that in my TBR for a very long time when it launched. And after that, I just forgot about it, because it was taking a lot of time to come to India. So
Okay.
I think I should go back to it.
Well, if it's out, her latest one, Summer Romance, has just come out, so that might be in India already. But yeah, Nora Goes Off Script was the first one of hers that I read, and yeah, really enjoyed that.
I would love to read that. I would love to read that. And thank you so much for all of these recommendations, for talking to me, for being here today, Paige Toon. I mean, thank you so much for everything, for writing such amazing romances, for making a heart bleed and yet crave more and more of whatever you're writing. So thank you for being the awesome writer that you are, and for feeding us with all of these heartwarming, heart-wrenching stories. And I absolutely love them.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you for connecting with them and feeling the way that I feel when you're reading them. That means the world.
And thank you, fellow readers, for tuning into this conversation. If you haven't read Seven Summers yet, I have it written here. Go pick it up at the bookstore near you, and I'm sure you're going to love it as much as I did. Everybody who I have suggested this book has loved it, so just go and pick it up without thinking about any other thing.
Thank you.
Until then, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and follow us on Instagram. I'll add Paige's Insta handle as well in the description, so you guys can follow her as well. And if you like this discussion, please don't forget to give us a big fat thumbs up, and I'll see you in the next episode.